Imagine working full-time, doing everything right, and still being unable to afford rent in the city you work in. For millions of Americans, this isn't bad luck, it's the system itself. Our minimum wage laws are completely disconnected from the cost of living. And until we fix that link, the cycle of poverty, homelessness, and working-class struggle will never end. Welcome to the Rational Review. Today we're breaking down a simple but revolutionary idea, tying the minimum wage directly to the cost of housing. Not based on politics, not on guesswork, but on math. The foundation of this plan is something known as the 30-50-20 budgeting rule. This principle has guided personal finance for decades. It says that 30% of your gross income should go to housing, 50% to other needs like food, transportation, and healthcare, and 20% should be reserved for savings, investments, or discretionary spending. Now let's focus on that first number, 30%. That 30% isn't just rent. It includes rent, utilities, and renter's insurance, the basic cost of having a place to live safely and comfortably. If we accept that as a fair and realistic standard, then any full-time worker should earn enough that this 30% covers a one-bedroom apartment in their area. That means wages would automatically adjust to match the real-world housing market in each county. This is the foundation of what I call the Fair Wage Housing Balance Act. Here's how it works. Every year, local housing data, such as the average cost of a one-bedroom apartment, is gathered by agencies like the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. Using that data, we calculate a fair local minimum wage. The math is simple. Take the average monthly cost of rent plus estimated utilities and insurance. Divide that total by 0.3, because that's the 30% of gross income allocated to housing. Then divide that result by 160, the average number of full-time work hours in a month. The number you get is the minimum hourly wage a person should earn to afford housing without falling into poverty. This connects wages to reality, something our current system completely ignores. Let's put this into perspective. Imagine in your county, the average cost for a one-bedroom apartment plus utilities and renter's insurance is $1,500 per month. 1,500 divided by 0.3 equals 5,000. That means a person needs to earn about $5,000 per month, or roughly $31 an hour, to live within that 30-50-20 rule. That's the level at which someone can pay rent, afford food, handle basic bills, and still save a little for the future. That's what fair compensation should mean. Now, that number might sound high compared to the current federal minimum wage, but that's the reality we've ignored. If full-time work doesn't cover basic living expenses, then it's not fair compensation. It's modern wage slavery. Critics might say, well, small businesses can't afford that. And that's a fair concern. But the truth is, if a business model depends on paying wages so low that workers can't afford to live, then that business isn't sustainable. It's being subsidized by poverty. Because when workers can't afford rent, taxpayers end up paying the difference through housing vouchers, food stamps, and welfare programs. That means the public is indirectly funding low-wage employers. Your taxes keep their labor cheap. A wage system tied to housing costs would end that hidden subsidy. It would make businesses pay the true cost of labor, the cost of allowing a person to live with dignity in the community they serve. Let's talk about economic impact. First, consumer spending would rise dramatically. When workers earn enough to cover their needs and save a little, they spend money locally, on groceries, repairs, restaurants, and services. That money circulates through the local economy instead of being drained by emergency debt, payday loans, or evictions. Second, government spending on welfare programs would decrease. When wages rise to meet reality, fewer people need public assistance. This means less strain on programs like SNAP, Housing Aid, and Medicaid. That saves taxpayer money and redirects those funds to infrastructure, education, and public safety. Third, homelessness would decline. Many people assume homelessness is mostly about addiction or mental health, but the truth is that working homelessness is a growing crisis. In many cities, people work full-time, sometimes 2 jobs, and still can't afford rent. Tying wages to housing directly prevents that from happening. Now let's look at mental health and family stability. Financial stress is one of the leading causes of depression, anxiety, and relationship breakdowns. When people live paycheck to paycheck, one car repair or medical bill can throw their entire life off balance. A stable, fair wage means predictable housing, less stress, and stronger families. It also means more time. People don't have to juggle 2 or 3 jobs just to survive. Imagine what happens to children in those households. When parents aren't constantly stressed or working double shifts, kids perform better in school, eat better, and grow up in safer, more stable homes. So while this proposal is about economics, it's also deeply about human health and social well-being. This kind of reform would also push businesses toward greater efficiency and innovation. Instead of relying on cheap labor to stay profitable, companies would have to improve productivity, reduce waste, and invest in technology that creates long-term sustainability. And yes, small businesses deserve support during that transition. That's why the plan could include a phase-in period, along with tax credits or subsidies to help small employers adapt. But after that period, the expectation is clear. If you employ people, you pay them enough to live. No exceptions. Let's consider how this fits across the political spectrum. For Democrats, this plan aligns with goals of wage fairness, economic equality, and housing reform. It guarantees that no one working full-time will live in poverty. For Republicans, it aligns with principles of accountability and market fairness. It reduces dependence on government programs, strengthens families, and rewards hard work. Both sides get what they say they want: a stronger, freer, more responsible economy. And it's all done through data, not ideology. Now think about how this could transform entire communities. When wages rise in step with housing, renters have more stability. Landlords see consistent payments. Evictions drop. And neighborhoods become safer and cleaner because people can afford to stay put, take pride in their homes, and contribute to the local economy. Even the job market becomes more balanced. Employers offering low pay will either improve or exit the market, making room for better, more efficient businesses. That's capitalism with integrity. Some might worry about inflation. Would raising wages this way cause prices to skyrocket? Not necessarily. Because the increase is targeted and regional. It's not a blanket national mandate. Wages rise only in areas where housing costs are high and stay reasonable where housing is affordable. That keeps the balance fair and prevents unnecessary inflationary pressure. Let's summarize what this proposal could fix. It could reduce homelessness. It could lower government spending on welfare. It could stabilize families and improve mental health. It could make education outcomes stronger. It could revive local economies. And it could restore faith in the idea that full-time work actually leads to stability, not exhaustion and debt. This plan doesn't pick winners and losers. It simply redefines fairness using math, not emotion. When you think about it, this isn't a radical idea. It's common sense that we've somehow lost. We measure inflation, rent, and fuel costs monthly, yet the federal minimum wage hasn't moved since 2009. That's 16 years of wage stagnation, while the cost of living has doubled or tripled in many areas. If work is the foundation of our economy, then wages should be anchored to the real cost of living, not to outdated politics or corporate lobbying. The Fair Wage Housing Balance is a system that updates itself. It uses housing data to set fair wages automatically, so no politician has to debate the value of someone's labour ever again. If rent rises, wages follow. If rent falls, wages adjust. It's fluid, local, and logical. A worker in Los Angeles shouldn't earn the same as a worker in rural Kansas, and under this plan, they wouldn't. Each county sets its own fair minimum wage based on the actual cost to live there. That's fairness through precision. In the end, this proposal does more than fix wages. It redefines what it means to live in a fair society. A society where work guarantees shelter, where economic freedom doesn't depend on geography or luck, and where businesses and workers both share responsibility for stability. It's not left or right. It's rational. And it might just be the economic reset this country needs. I'm your host from The Rational Review. If you believe in fair pay, logical policy, and realistic reform, share this video and join the discussion in the comments. Because when math meets morality, fairness isn't just possible, it's inevitable.